Today, we are looking at how families are reshaping wealth planning. You know, that old model, build wealth and then pass it on. Well, that has certainly shifted. More families are now creating what they call a living legacy, where wealth is actually shared strategically while everyone is still here on planet Earth to enjoy it, to benefit from it. So, joining Carolina and I today is mortgage expert Dion Beg, founder of Kanga Mortgage, to talk about how families can safely work together to unlock and transfer wealth today, giving our kids, that next generation, a head start. So welcome, Dion.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you here. And you know, Carolina and I have been chatting about this topic quite a bit in that there is this big shift. And let's start with the big shift. Parents build wealth, right? Like that's how it's always been. And then they pass it down through inheritance, right? We're all
Yes.
waiting. Where's our inheritance? Where's our inheritance?
Right.
Well, given the housing market today and I don't know, the cost of living and everything is just so much more expensive, why does waiting until death to transfer wealth, I don't know, actually put the next generation back a bit?
Okay, so this is going to be a long answer to what sounds like a simple question, but there's a lot of things that have been going on, not just in Canada, but much across the Western world that has transformed in the last 20 to 30 years. So number one would be that people are living longer. So whereas the lifespan of people just 30 years ago was expected to be around age 70, many people are now living well into their 80s, 90s, and even to the 100. But the average age of death in Canada right now is around 83, whereas just 50 years ago, that age was around 70. So we've increased lifespan. It means that inheritance that used to come when those parents passed at age 70 isn't coming for an extra, say, 12 years. And that 12 years is a significant period of time for the people behind them who are potentially waiting for a financial boost. That's one factor. The other factor is the price of housing. Again, not just in Canada, but in the US, England, Australia, we've seen a housing boom. Just 15 years ago, it would take around 4 times household income to purchase a property. And now we're looking at closer to 10 times household income, especially in areas of the GTA. And so if what I've been seeing is if the older generation wants their children to experience the lifestyle that they enjoyed, then they're recognizing that they need to take some of that significant wealth that they've been lucky enough to build because they lived through that housing boom and transition it to their children earlier at age 70, not at age 85 when they die, but age 70 for, number one, getting them on the property ladder. And secondly, they get to witness and the enjoyment of their hard-earned wealth through their children and grandchildren by passing it on before they die.
Yeah. Now, Dion, are we really looking back? This is cultural, right? Not just the West, but mainly North America. That initially, like when you look back at Toronto in the 40s or 30s, when there were like waves of migration that were coming, and multi-generational families would live together, right? Up and even after marriage, they would stay together and they would support one another. Then through the boom, through all of that, it became that, you know, if there were 4 children in the house, there would be 5 houses in that family, right? Like people would want to buy 4 different homes plus the parent. Like there was this individuation, right? That, but also was a duplication of expenses and a duplication of investment. And yes, a duplication of wealth creation. Now that we're seeing that bubble burst, for lack of a better word, are we seeing the need to go back to that multi-generational support, not just to buy, but to sustain, you know, a lifestyle that is the American or the Canadian dream?
You know, that's a great observation there, Carolina. And yes, I am seeing people return to the times of old, which is that, yes, because we can't potentially afford our own housing structure, then yes, maybe we're going to continue living with family. And one of the funny complaints that I get from my clients who have been lucky enough to build wealth through real estate is, you know what, my child who's in their 20s or 30s is still living with us, likely not going to be married or married anytime soon. And so, and this house is too small for us. And so we need to actually purchase a property together with using the child's income, a larger property that will accommodate everybody and sustain people at a sort of in a larger space, so everybody can live more comfortably together. So we are seeing a return to that. I recently had a client contact me, sell it with the intention to sell their large property and buy a triplex. And the reason being, the parents would live in one unit and each of their two children would have their own units. So that's the types of decisions that people are making right now.
Well, another aspect of that is, and I think about the clients that we serve, is that as we age, and yes, as you say, we're living into our 80s, 90s, and in the lucky ones, top 100, is where do we go for support? There aren't a lot of communities where people that need support as they age can buy into at a reasonable price. A lot of the retirement residences, the better ones anyway, are out of reach for a lot of people.
Yeah,
very costly. And so, yes, if we want to be cared for as we get older and rely on our children like the good old days, then yes, at some point we have no choice but to move in together or find some sort of solution, because there isn't a lot of housing opportunity for us as we age, certainly in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area.
Yeah, that financial need, as well as the physical and emotional need, is being solved by people consolidating households. So recently I had a client, she's a personal trainer, so she understands health and fitness, and her parents are very much aging. And she explored these aged care facilities where they could live with some level of independence, but the cost of that housing was something in the range of $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year. When she compared that to the idea of buying a home which could accommodate her and her parents and still pay for a personal support worker, it was actually more cost effective. And that's the decision they made. But not just cost effective, she gets to spend time with her parents, help them with travel to their doctors and all those other things, and still be able to pay for professional support in that household. So that's another reason that we're seeing people buy houses that accommodate multi-generations.
Yeah, no, and also the emotional, right? Because the younger kids will have kids, and because we were pre-show, we were speaking about the difference between intergenerational and multi-generational. And multi-generational, I looked it up because that's just what I do. Multi-generational is really having people of different ages. If we're speaking within the family construct, different generations together, right? Living under the same roof for functionality and convenience. But intergenerational, as it relates to family, is the intentional act of creating wealth together, which is what you're describing, where you're making a strategic decision. It's like, we save money, therefore, by living together, we can accomplish this as a family, like having family goals. And I think with what's happened with AI and online and all of the decentralization of schools, church, and family, maybe real estate is doing us a roundabout favor that is forcing people back to count and rely on one another. Now, that is a little bit different than what you said, which I love that is coming in our upcoming book. So stay tuned. It's about winning the real estate lottery, right? There's a difference between moving in together and all of us row together and all of us support each other, than having this wealth through the real estate lottery and then begin to dispense it, like eat away at it, not knowing what's around the corner. What are the pros and cons between one and the other, in your opinion?
Yeah, so if we're talking about an early inheritance where you're choosing to consciously start to give some of your accumulated wealth to your children before you're passing, it must be done very much strategically. Number one, to the point that it will help your children. Giving them $5,000 or $500,000. There's a very big scope there. We need to figure out how much do they actually need your help with. At the same time, the balance on that is if you're a 75-year-old giving wealth to your children today, you want to ensure that what you are giving will not financially jeopardize you in the next
Correct.
decade or 2 decades. So there has to be a balance there. And these are decisions that have to be made on a case-by-case basis, right?
There must be, sorry.
Mhm.
I say there must
Yes.
be tax issues as well, I'm thinking, if you're giving a chunk of change.
So I'm going to stay out of that conversation because that's definitely a tax
An
accountant question.
accountant, yeah.
But what I will say is that when you make these decisions, it facilitates a couple of things. Number one, you know how? Well, actually, I'll tell you this. There's an economist in Canada who said that one of the biggest complaints that he hears from women in their 60s and 70s is that they don't have grandchildren. This is a real complaint, okay? And if they dig deeper, the economic reason for that is, well, if you can't afford a house, then how would you imagine this younger generation, if they can't afford to buy a house, how would they then imagine that they would have enough funds to raise children, right? If you can't create a stable shelter, then the next level of thinking, which is let's grow a family, isn't even available to them. And so what we're seeing is that, this financial gift gives the opportunity for that younger generation to have a sense of financial stability to go and actually grow the family, actually have grandchildren.
Wow.
But sorry, go ahead, Renee.
No, I was going to say that is brilliant. That has never crossed my mind before. That link, which is so obvious, but I never brought that thought into the conversation before. Go ahead, Carolina.
No, what I was thinking is that we're all, I think, as a culture, especially in the US and Canada, we're North American centric, our show, but I'm sure, this may resonate in everywhere in the world. We are all have to rethink it, right? The same from the humbleness of the younger people having to learn to accommodate living with their older relatives, perhaps all under one roof, but also the parents. Because I meet ladies, and I know one for a fact, a client, excuse me, we were having a bit of a chuckle because she got into this massive fight with her grown children because they wanted to move closer to her so that she could help with the grandkids. And she was saying, no, I am done raising children. I am not going to be looking after your kids. And the grown kids were devastated. Like, what do you mean, right? And I think those years after the Second World War and now where we had that boom, that prosperity, that individuation, it's shifted the mind of everyone. It's not just the younger people that went out and they want to have their own place and now they're finding to have to perhaps humble down, right? To come and live back home, but also the parents. What does it mean for the parent to now go back and live in harmony in building that wealth together? So are you finding that what's the mindset shift? Is it happening fast enough?
It's a funny thing you mentioned here because there's kind of two extremes here. One is the older generation who says, this is my money and I am going to burn through it and live my biggest life, and I'm not going to leave a penny for anybody behind me. Some of that is, personal psychology, personal relationships, right? Things that have happened in their life that then, lead them to make that decision. So that's one extreme. The other extreme is we feel like we are the custodians of our family. We must look after our family. And the best context for this is assuming relationships are still intact, it's the mindset of the individual, which is if this is the kind of person who, when their child was young, they did everything they possibly could for their education, they moved into the right school district, anything that the child needed to improve their chances of success in life, the parents did, then that's the type of older person who will not stop at when their child turns 18. They continue to have that mindset throughout their life. And so we're seeing people take this very much an estate building, an intergenerational transfer of wealth very seriously. And I'll say this, a lot of people think that when they hear these big words, intergenerational wealth, they're thinking of people who are already multimillionaires, the Rockefellers or the Rogers families of the world. No, I'm talking about just regular, everyday people, a teacher and a police officer who happen to do well in life, accumulate some stocks, some real estate, and say, okay, now these are the resources that we have. How do we play with these things in order to achieve the best for the generations behind us?
Yeah, I agree. It becomes pieces on the chessboard. And certainly I think about my own situation. I don't want to lose what we've built, because we built it in part for our life. Hopefully we reach 99. I think I want to reach 99.
Oh, darling, I think you'll be here at 999. I don't think you're going anywhere.
I don't know. But it almost becomes like a protection, not like a hoarding, but a guys, we worked hard for this. You're not going to mess it up. So we're going to work together so that we can all accomplish our goals.
So who's
as a family?
The kids?
Yep.
Oh, the
and
kids.
So on that point, if I just expand on that, co-creating that wealth with your children is something that we are also seeing. So rather than just here's 200 grand, go buy yourself a house, or here's 100 grand. What I'm seeing people do is maybe that 30-year-old child is going to continue living at home, but together with their parents, they'll go and buy that $600,000 investment property where it's a duplex renting upstairs and downstairs, and they own it together. Everybody on title, everybody benefits from the uplift. And let's say in 10 years from now, that child has their own life, then at least they've created this equity and wealth together with their parents, at which point they separate that asset and everybody moves on from a much richer position. So it doesn't mean you're just giving money.
Wealth. You know what? I have a little bit of a difficult time with the concept of giving away at the expense of your own well-being, right? Like you see a lot of, and I've experienced it, Renee and I, and I'm sure you too, in the line of work that we do, we speak to a lot of people, right? And there was this lady who is happy at home, wanted to age at home, and was looking into ways for her to stay, because equity is only realized if you are able to
you cannot eat
liquid,
equity,
right? You can't eat from the paper. And so she wanted to stay at home, and she wanted to ways to release and her equity, right? And she was looking at different products, from reverse mortgages to different things, and her kids were completely against it, not because it was what was best for her, but because it took away from their inheritance. So I almost like the idea when parents, it's not harsh, but for parents to say, you know what? This is not about, if there's anything left when I die, wonderful. And I'll try my best to look out for you. But while I'm alive, right? Let's co-create together. I love that. Dion, that needs to be, like, you're coming on the tour, on the PWT tour, because we all generational need to unlearn and relearn all the bad habits that selfishness, really, and sometimes greed that comes, that sets in families, between siblings and all. Sorry, go ahead.
It's a lot of times it's ignorance.
It's fear.
A lot of people don't know how, obviously I'll talk about real estate, how that they can work together, leverage, as Dion said, leverage their abilities, their money, and begin that process. So I'll say easily, because it's easy in my eyes, because it's
It's
something
easy
that we're
going
comfortable
in,
with.
it's hard coming out. So whenever you're setting what Dion is talking about, the co-creation, the co-investment, all of these, it needs to be set up properly with proper exits and proper understanding of the sustainability of it. It's
Well,
like two friends
mhm.
buying a house together, and then two single ladies buying a house together, and then one lady in 20 minutes begins to date someone else and one's out, right?
Mhm,
And then the other
mhm.
lady's like, wait a minute, but what am I going to do?
But even before that, just even today's homeowners, right? Who they've managed to get their foot in the real estate door. It's okay, guys. You can now leverage the equity you've got, and you can start to build from there. And Dion, that's another episode we need to have you back for. But let's segue from there, because this is a great segue into the family dynamics, right? Because it's
Mhm.
one thing to have, as you said, Carolina, all the exits and structure and all the proper foundation in place. But how do you navigate, for example, if you are going to start to share some of your wealth to help out your kids in your 70s instead of waiting to your 90s? How do you do that without, what if you've got a couple of kids, 2, 3 kids, and one of them has a wife or a husband that you're like, oh, I don't know if they're going to, make it for very long. The other
Mm.
ones are more stable. Do you hold a mortgage for some, but you give a gift of money for the others? How do you deal
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah. So, firstly, it's all on a case by case basis, but I'll give you a simple example of a family that we recently helped. They had 3 children, 2 of which were older and happened to be able to purchase real estate in the GTA prior to the insane boom that we saw maybe 5 years ago.
Mhm.
Then they have a younger child who, just due to their age, wasn't able to buy at the time. They're now gainfully employed, but they need help that their older siblings didn't need, because they're buying into a
Mm.
different environment right now. Okay. The older siblings were able to purchase properties at, say, 500K that are now worth 900K, meaning this younger person now has to buy that house at 900K, and their income is not double what their siblings' income was 10 years ago.
Mhm.
So in a scenario like this, we have seen parents intentionally give that early inheritance to the younger person, but simultaneously adjust their will so that everybody acknowledges that, okay, this person got 100 grand, and therefore, when we pass years from now, this 100 grand will be proportionately calculated and deducted from that younger person's inheritance. And it's in black and white, and it's just math at that point. It's not emotional, it's just math. And this is where, and I think all of us have heard of families falling apart at the time when, parents pass away and the estate is distributed, and people are yelling and screaming about how unjust things are. But it's just like anything. Like, many families don't talk about money, and that's just the way they are. But I think the wealthiest families in the world talk about money all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so understanding that discussion of money can actually avoid those occurrences of estates leading to fighting of siblings at the time of death of parents. Those are really important things to do earlier. Communication is key, and equity and fairness is key.
Wow, that is so true. I know when we work with the states, people say all the time, "Oh, our kids get along, right? There won't be any issues when we die, and they're divvying up our assets." And that's so not true. There are, I'm sure there are perfect families. I've just never met one, and the amount of adults older than me that are, and I mentioned this to Carolina a couple of weeks ago, that we had one client where their 2 sons in their mid 60s, I thought they were going to start literally duking it out, like physically.
Wow.
One of
Okay.
them left the room in a huff and a puff, and all due to a train set, a missing train set from
Wow.
the mother's home in the basement.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
right, like this stuff is real and happens. So I agree with you. Communication and is so important. And I love how you just laid it out so logically. Like, of course, guys, we're going to give your little sister a break, a little
Yep.
handout, but
Yep.
it's all going to come out in the wash. And if they're
Yes.
doing okay and they love their sister, why wouldn't they want to do that?
You got it. It doesn't impact them now, and it'll be equalized in the future. So
Yeah, that is, I love that. And especially with blended families, right? Like there's so much consideration. Now, we've spoken about the real estate lottery and all that. You know, if you bought years ago, lovely. What about the new families coming to the country, right? What would your recommendation be, in your opinion, as to the best way to leverage the family unit to begin to establish themselves in Canada?
yeah, so we deal with a lot of new to Canada immigrants. I mean, 50% of people walking around the streets of the GTA are immigrants or the children of immigrants, right? Now, in terms of the best approach, it'll be the same questions that we would ask a Canadian born and bred, which are, what are your needs? What are your financial capabilities? And then how can you work together? And your resources are not just your resources, but your network. So if it's just a young couple who are buying, then sure, they're going to be able to buy something based on their income. But if it's a family of four, with two grown adult children, and we have four incomes, then that changes things. And I will say that I feel like it is the new to Canada people who are more willing to, at least in the short term, combine forces and live together, so that in 5 to 10 years, each of them can go off and do better things. It is that idea of delayed gratification, which is very hard in North America. When we have TikTok and Instagram and saying you should be a millionaire yesterday, it's really hard for people to have that 5 to 10 year mindset. But if you can adopt that, then good things come for those who can hang in there.
One last question from me. Should you ever co-sign for your kids?
Yeah, the answer is it depends. And if you do co-sign, you must understand what you're doing and the consequences on both sides. On one side, you're gaining an asset or part ownership in an asset. On the other side, you have equal responsibility of the attached liability of the mortgage that comes with that. And so it's not for everybody. And also it will impact your ability to qualify for future purchases. In fact, one very big error that I see is we have, let's say, a mother and father in their 50s, 60s, they're both working, and they both co-sign on the first child's mortgage and effectively tie both of their incomes to that mortgage. And then when the second child comes to go and buy a property, they don't have any capacity to now help the second child. What should have happened is a conversation around, okay, well, if your second child will need your help, well, maybe only the mom signs for this person and the dad preserves his income to sign for the second child. So these are the conversations that we have with clients when co-signing.
And you co-sign an asset, you never co-sign debt.
Ideally.
Well,
but
you know what? I come from human resources and finance, darling. It has to be said.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as ideally.
Yeah. So, co-signing on somebody's car is one of the biggest pains that I see in the world of mortgages, because a lot of people don't know that the $500 car payment that you just helped your child co-sign on reduces your own mortgage borrowing capacity by $100,000. That $500 payment translates to a reduction of $100,000. And so these little things that truthfully should be taught in school, people are making these types of errors every day. So before you do anything big like that, you should speak with a broker or a banker about what is the impact on not just now, but me in the future.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have a conversation about that, because there are things that a lot of people do not realize they're tied together, like your insurance premiums to your credit score, for example. Like it's things that seem so random that once explained, you realize, oh, okay, right? Like, absolutely. Every time I talk to you, I walk away with like a bee buzzing in my head. It's like, what about this? What about that? So brilliant, Dion. Thank you so much for joining us today in our PWT Prime Living. And we are so looking forward to September the 12th, where you're going to have the opportunity to meet Dion live at our Living Your Prime event in North GTA. More details to follow, but definitely we'll put the contact below for you to connect. And Dion, of course, is part of our upcoming book, that the new Prime, and also he's in our magazines in all of our PWT world. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dion from Kanga Mortgages. Thank you, Renee from Get Right Size. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.